How's it going, guys? Hope you're all having a great day. Today's video we are looking at the top 5 tanks I think that you need in World of Tanks console in 2021, what I think the best meta tanks are, and basically going over what I reckon you should be looking at getting if you haven't already, and discussing what's good about them and what you can take advantage of as part of this update 6.0, and what I reckon actually works well in game, what you can do the most damage in, and also what kind of tanks really shouldn't be played as well. We'll mention those within this video. Now, to start off with, we'll look at the Super Conqueror. This is definitely one I think in-game is fantastic. It's got pretty much all-round statistics. It can really push out lots and lots of damage due to the high DPM for a heavy tank. It's just a way better version of the the FV215B, which is the British version, or the other British heavy tank. This one has really strong turret armor with a heat shield, which stops heat rounds coming in. Really difficult to pen unless you manage to put a shot right in between with really high amounts of penetration, like a Jaeger round, right in between that heat shield and also the mantlet of the tank, meaning it's going to be kind of RNG dependent as to whether someone's going to be able to pen you. The other thing that's good about this tank is the speed. You know, you can go up 35 kilometers an hour, which means it's not a slow one. You get a lot of gun depression in this thing, which is really nice. I think it gets 8 degrees or 10 degrees of gun depression, which means that you can use rid lines really well, means your armor's better, and it just means the versatility of this tank is really good. In terms of the armor, you know, definitely the turret's good, like I've mentioned. You do have that weak point on the top on the cupola, but it is really hard to hit and it doesn't often get penned. It's kind of that circular dome bit. The actual like flat bar I don't even think is actually a weak point. I don't think it's actually counts as armor. It's only that like circular bit at the top of the tank. Side of the turret you can pen very easily, but often you don't get the chance because this thing is versatile. It can move really quickly and it can turn really quickly to face the opponents. It is fairly big, so artillery rounds can hit it very easily, but other than that, I think that this tank is definitely one you want to be looking at. The lower plate is fairly weak, so you are going to get penned through that, but if you angle, which you can do in this tank, it can work really well, and the upper plate is actually thick enough with that spaced armor on top to be able to bounce a couple of rounds. So yeah, I think this tank is absolutely fantastic. The 400 alpha with a really good rate of fire. You're looking at, you know, nearly 2400 DPM in a heavy tank is really good, especially when you buff it. Accuracy is fantastic along with aim time, and this thing barely misses on the move. So yeah, I think that this tank is absolutely fantastic, and it's one that you should definitely be grinding towards if you want an all-round kind of medium heavy tank almost. It's like a hybrid, except it does actually play more like a heavy. It just has that medium gun that is, yeah, fantastic. So yeah, one I would definitely work towards getting if you haven't got it already. Let me know what you think about it, and also let me know if you want to change out any of the tanks that are in this top 5 video. Now, it wouldn't be a top 5 video if at number 2 you didn't have some Russian tanks throughout it, and this one is the Object 430U. This is an absolutely fantastic Russian medium tank that plays very much like a heavy. It is a really heavily armoured medium. The gun is fantastic. You've got really good bouncy armour. You can angle in this thing. You've got good side armour, which means that you can side scrape in it. It really does cause trouble to some of the opponents that you'll come up against. Other mediums will absolutely hate playing against you because of your armour and just the ability to bounce round after round. You've got a good view range, you know, when you boost it up with the perks. You've got good aim time and accuracy when you manage to put some perks on. So yeah, although the base accuracy of this thing is 0.4, you do manage to bring that down to probably like 0.33, which is really nice. It means you can hit on the move and stuff, especially after update 6.0 on World of Tanks console. So making this thing a really fantastic. The 5.13 rounds per minute means that the 440 alpha damage that you do have on this tank is greatly increased by the loading time buffs that you can have on your crew, and also as part of the equipment. You can, with your penetration as well, use them heat rounds that can do 340 penetration, which is more than enough to go through every single tier 10 in the game, as long as you're aiming at the weak spots and using your knowledge of the enemy tanks to your advantage. You can use that mobility of 48 kilometers an hour, making it mobile enough to get around the battlefield and use your gun in different situations, making it so versatile and definitely one of the tanks you want to be picking up. I personally haven't actually got it, as I haven't worked down this line at all, but I will be looking at getting my hands on this as soon as I start grinding another line. Obviously it's the upgraded version of the 430, which is a choice you can use due to the increased DPM, but the 430U just as an overall starting line and starting medium is really, really good, and it will be rewarding for any beginner players who are starting to get into World of Tanks to go down. The line before it is also not bad, the tier 9 being really, really nice one, and the tier 8 being fairly decent, and then the line before that is actually okay as well, good DPM and stuff like that. The third tank on the list is now the Vala. This is the British tier 10 reward tank. It will cost you 450,000 free XP, or you could have picked it up as part of the Vala season pass, I believe. This thing is just absolutely ridiculous, and it can really, really be a pain to fight against. Its armour is absolutely amazing. It does have a weak point, but it really is a struggle to pen, especially with the angling that is on this thing. The lower plate being the weakest point of the tank, meaning you can pen it fairly reliably if you get the whole tank, but often it can use its gun depression along with its really slim hull to be able to get into positions where you can't even shoot the lower plate, and you're going to have to rely on trying to pen the side of it or getting round it, outflanking it and stuff like that. This tank is really, really good, and with the mobility of the tank, the penetration on its standard rounds being 270 with 440 alpha damage, mean that the tank is just pretty much broken in my eyes. You know, it's got better DPM than the 430U with the same amount of alpha, higher pen on its standard rounds. You've got vision range is decent as well, the mobility is very similar, and this tank is definitely, in my opinion, better than the 430U, but still really, really, both of them being absolutely fantastic. What do I think could possibly be the weakest part of this tank? I reckon it's probably the side armour, but even that, you do get this space sheet, which means that heat rounds are going to struggle to go through the side of you, just because it counts as like a little bit of armour in between, and it's going to be a struggle for heat rounds that get stopped by any objects in between when they hit. So it means that only AP and APCR are really going to be able to hit you through the side unless they hit the top bit. Armor on this tank is fantastic, like I've said, and it's just an absolutely really, really broken tank to go. So obviously if you save up the free XP that you are earning to go for this tank, then I would 100% recommend it. I wouldn't recommend purchasing it with gold by converting XP to free XP, because it would cost you an arm and a leg, and it really isn't worth it when you could play something like the 430U that isn't too much of a difference between it. Yeah, really, really good tank, and definitely one to be grinding towards in the long term, you saving up that free XP if you really want a tank that can perform really, really well in game. The next tank on this list is a mercenary tank. This thing is absolutely broken in every regard, taking the top things of every single vehicle and then slamming it onto one tank, making it absolutely ridiculous and overpowered 100%. Those of you saying, yeah, the armor's bad, but it's not that bad really when you take a 50B hull, slap a chieftain turret on the top of it, add a TVP gun with 320 alpha damage that it was the unnerfed TVP gun, making this thing just an absolute disgusting thing. to play against, and yeah, it's just absolutely disgusting and vile. When in the hands of an experienced player, this thing can be absolutely broken. Unfortunately, you can't currently get this tank, but you can get it on contracts, which will be coming back soon. So I expect you'll be able to pick this thing up yourself. You do have to complete a series of challenges to be able to pick it up, but just check in the contracts tab of the ops page, and you might be able to see if you can pick it up there. As of the recording of this video, contracts are currently unavailable. As you can see, none of them are actually available right now, but you can go and you can select the contract when it is available. The armour of this tank, absolutely really, really good. There is this lower plate that can be penned, but it's very hard. You can be penned through the side fairly easily because it's fairly weak on the side. But it does get really big tracks, which means that it can't really be penned that easily. But you you do want to be aiming for this inner drive wheel at the very front of the tank to be able to pen it reliably. You can do that from almost the front. You can pen it through the side. But this thing will be whacking you for like 1,200 damage with its 4-shot autoloader. So yeah, be careful when you come up against this thing. Don't even face it if it's hold down, because the chieftain turret is just disgusting. And yeah, certainly a tank that I think, in my personal opinion, is pretty broken. You know, being able to go 67 kilometers forwards as well means that it can mobilize itself all around the battlefield. And yeah, absolutely ridiculous. 310 premium pen means you can go through pretty much anything, and this tank will definitely be able to grant you some really good games overall. And when it has one of the highest win rates on console, I'm not surprised, because it is just that good. And certainly when the contracts were available, everyone was playing this thing because it was just disgusting. So yeah, if you get the opportunity to get your hands on it, then definitely do. And we'll see what the matchmaker ends up being once that contract gets released again. So yeah. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a video without the T92 HMC. This is the tier 10 artillery on the American line. You know, it's one of those that Wargaming removed the Death Star and the FV 4005 Hesh pen of 1850 that it used to be, reduced it to 1450 because being able to one-shot tanks was overpowered. But then they forget about obviously all of the tier 8 and above artillery with, you know, 1800 plus damage on every single round that they have when they penetrate. You know, at least they get low pen on their rounds, like, you know, the 370 AP round that this thing gets, dealing 1800 damage, and fairly reliable, especially with the accuracy buffs that have been implemented on the game, and the aim time buffs because of update 6.0, giving every single tank better accuracy, including artillery, meaning that, you know, you're going to get hit more precisely by T92s. They did nothing to the splash radius of this tank, which means that with the premium Hesh you can be splashed for 1,000 damage by not even being hit. I've hit underneath an IS-4 for 1,250 damage with my premium Hesh rounds. Yeah, this thing is absolutely broken, and I really don't get how people justify artillery not being broken, because it really is. When you can splash someone from halfway across the map or nearly across the full map, miss them for 1,000 damage, or, you know, that removes like half their hit points if they're at tier 10 on average, unless it's a heavy tank with high hit points. Or a medium tank at tier like 8 is going to be absolutely devastated. You know, that's nearly all of the health gone from missing. And when you consider you'll be aiming at the top of tanks, which is weakest, the 120 pen on its standard rounds means you'll pen pretty much any tank from above, as long as you hit like the weakest part of their armour from above. The longer the distance means that it's going to be able to hit down on the opponent, which means that any of the British heavies are going to have an absolute nightmare. You know, the FV215B is an absolute tinderbox for this thing to hit, and you can pen them so reliably. Is this thing blatantly overpowered? Yeah, 100%. There is no way you can justify that 2,250 damage on a tank with 120 pen that can hit the top of tanks from halfway across the map, can't be hit itself or anything like that, will ever be actually right in the game. And it's definitely one of the tanks that is just absolutely crazy in game, and I definitely think you should pick yourself up the T92 if you can. or if you've got any interest in playing artillery, it's my most played tank, so I know exactly how broken this thing can be. Yes, I used to be one of those players after 15,000 games that I'd never played a single game in artillery, but after being absolutely crapped on by the T92 for 15,000 games, I decided to have a go myself. And when you can average 2,700 damage per shot, this thing can be really, really devastating. Although it doesn't have the highest victories, that's because usually I have a better win rate when I can actually mobilise and get around, and I don't have to rely on my team to protect me in the game. So yeah, this thing's just disgustingly overpowered, and the fact I can one-shot someone from full health from my own spawn without any chance of them being able to do anything to me is just ridiculous. So yeah, I think that those are the top 5 tanks I would recommend on World of Tanks console. There's loads of honourable mentions like the T57 Heavy. You've got tanks like the FV4202, which I think is fantastic. There's some underpowered ones or underrated ones in the Foch 155. When you can get that working really well, you can average massive amounts of damage. You've got heavy tanks like the IS-7 and the 705A, which can be worked really well, and the DPM on the 140 can also be really good. Light tanks, you're looking at the AMX 13105, which has got even better than it was previously. I think it's one of the most readily available and really, really good tanks to play at tier 10 in terms of light tanks now, because of the accuracy buffs on the move, which kind of held it back before update 6.0. And then you've got things like the TVP T5051 with its autoloader that is just absolutely broken when you can get that working well, and the mobility of it, meaning you can get around the map really, really nicely. But the machine is just 100% a better TVP T50 because it has armor and it's faster, and yeah, it just is a better machine, better TVP. So overall, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I will be doing more top 5 videos on certain different tanks and certain tank destroyers. Maybe I'll do the classes. Would like to see what you guys think about that, and then we'll move on from there after this video is finished and I get your feedback. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more videos like this, as well as guides, news and anything related to World of Tanks Conk, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.